The ID card skidded across the polished marble floor of Sterling Financial Bank's vast lobby, landing with a sterile thud that echoed through the vaulted space. It was thrown, not dropped, by Anderson Mitchell, the sharply dressed senior manager of the branch, whose expression held the practiced civility of someone used to dismissing others without a second thought. The ID belonged to a man of 45, white, plainly dressed. "Apologies," Anderson said with a smile sharpened by condescension, subtly straightening the Italian silk tie at his throat. But documents like these don't exactly scream credibility. He made sure his voice carried, loud enough for the seated clients and glassy-eyed receptionist to overhear. Then, with a flick of detached interest, he added, "You might be better off finding a bank that aligns with your profile." The man didn't blink. He bent to retrieve the card slowly, with a grace that didn't match the scuffed soles of his shoes. Dressed in a soft blue shirt and an old brown canvas jacket, he looked like someone who'd walked miles to be ignored. But his eyes, calm, steady, almost disturbingly composed, held a quiet defiance. "I understand," he replied simply, his voice void of emotion, but not of power. The lobby stilled. Even the hum of the AC seemed to hush itself. A receptionist looked away. A client in a $1,000 suit furrowed his brow. No one knew the man's name. No one realized this was Jackson Coleman, CAO of Coleman Group, a tech titan valued in the billions, who had stepped into this branch not as himself, but as a test worth $5 billion. The glass doors of Sterling Bank had opened earlier that morning with a soft hiss as Jackson entered, unremarkable in appearance. Wrinkled shirt, khakis, a weathered jacket barely clinging to his frame. He carried a simple canvas bag that looked like it had seen more sun than boardrooms. Nearby, a sharply tailored executive was ushered in with champagne and warm smiles. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome back," came the greetings. Jackson barely registered it. He moved to the front desk where a young teller glanced at him, then quickly looked away. Her smile faltered. "Yes. Do you have an appointment?" she asked, voice polite but distant. "No," Jackson said kindly. "Just hoping to open a small business account." The teller hesitated, eyes flickering with judgment. "I'll see if someone is available." Jackson nodded, unfazed, placing his bag on the counter. Slowly, he unzipped it, pulling out a crisp folder containing all necessary documentation. Business license, tax ID, proof of incorporation, all under a small logistics startup name. Everything neat, everything clean, everything ignored. "I'd like to open a business account," he said again, softly. "It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. But the teller didn't even touch the folder. Her eyes moved from the logo to his shoes, judgment dancing in her gaze. "I think I need to call a manager," she said coolly, already lifting the receiver. Jackson smiled, not warmly, but with the patience of someone who had stood in this place before. Not this exact branch, but this moment. A moment 20 years ago, when he had sat in front of another polished desk with fewer wrinkles and more dreams than proof. Then, like now, he had been dismissed. Not because his idea wasn't viable, but because he didn't look the part. Back then, he'd left quietly. No money, no clout, just belief. Today, they courted his signature like royalty. But he had to know, was the world truly different now? Or had the gatekeepers simply changed faces? As he waited, the lobby grew colder. Not from temperature, but from something invisible, yet heavy. Echoes of doubt floated around him. Jackson pulled out his phone, typed slowly. He threw my ID. A reply lit up almost instantly. "Camilla, where are you?" Her name, the firebrand CEO of Coleman, his daughter, a rising star in her own right, glowed on the screen. He replied with only 2 words. "Not yet." No anger. No explanation, just resolve. Still the folder sat, untouched. The teller avoided his eyes. Across the room, Whispers began to stir. "He doesn't look like he belongs here," one associate murmured behind a clipboard. "Probably some guy pretending," came the smug reply. Jackson heard them. He always heard, but he didn't respond. He sat still, like stone, but his mind, sharpened steel, observing, measuring, watching the staff's movements, the security blind spots, the way the lobby segregated comfort and scrutiny. Patterns, always patterns. Anderson returned. His shoes announced his arrival before his voice did, sharp, fast, meant to assert. He didn't introduce himself, just glanced at the folder and exhaled. "Mr. Jackson," he said, finally acknowledging the name on the paperwork. "I'm afraid your business profile doesn't meet the strategic tier we prioritize. Our corporate accounts begin at a different level." Jackson met his gaze. "I only need basic international wire access." Anderson smiled. A thin veneer of professionalism. "It's not just about services," he said. "It's about alignment." Jackson raised an eyebrow, his tone calm but edged. "Is that code for something?" No reply. Just the soft scrape of the folder being slid back across the counter. Untouched. Anderson crossed his arms, eyes narrowing as they skimmed Jackson's worn clothes once more. No gold card. No credit history. His voice was soft, but each word felt like a blade dipped in dismissal. He wasn't speaking to Jackson. He was narrating for the room, for his own ego. Jackson didn't blink. He simply returned the gaze with unsettling calm. But Anderson's jaw tightened. There was something about the man's composure that made him uneasy. "You'd be amazed how many walk in hoping prestige comes free," Anderson muttered with a half-smirk. The words hung, heavy, in the air. A woman in a pencil skirt glanced up from her phone. An older gentleman at the ATM paused. They felt the shift in energy, not because of the words, but because of the venom laced in their delivery. Jackson lowered his gaze to the folder on the counter, still unopened. Anderson tapped the desk once, sharply. "I'm sure there's a local branch better suited to your tier." At the far end, a young associate named Paula, crisp uniform, barely into her career, noticed. She wasn't involved, but she'd heard enough. Her eyes flickered from Anderson to Jackson and quickly down again. But Jackson saw her, a brief glance, a flicker of humanity. He gave her a subtle nod, not pleading, not angry, just seen. He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. His smartwatch glowed softly, unseen. Recording started. He folded his hands neatly, unmoved. Stillness, not from resignation, but purpose. This wasn't surrender. This was strategy. He wasn't here to fight back, yet. He was here to remember, to capture their words, untouched by rebuttal. In the staff lounge, laughter echoed around a round table littered with plastic utensils and soda cans. Anderson leaned back mid-bite, boasting. Told him maybe find a bank that works for people like him. Laughter. Thought being polite would change the world. Another burst. One manager nearly choked on his drink. Anderson mimicked Jackson's voice, exaggerated and soft. "I just need a basic account." More laughter, except from Paula. She sat quietly at the table's edge, untouched salad in front of her, phone hidden beneath it. She typed quickly on LinkedIn, "Jackson Coleman." A moment passed. Her face changed. That night, Jackson sat at a small desk in a hotel room, city lights blinking behind him. His laptop glowed with the digital map of Sterling Bank's empire. Internal reports, press releases, executive bios, board minutes. Every document, a thread to pull. His phone buzzed. Camilla, video call. "Dad," she said, her voice equal parts concern and curiosity. "Are you sure about this? That's our lead banking partner." He didn't look up. "Exactly." Silence. "I needed to know how they treat people. When they think no one important is watching." He tapped the screen of his watch. It replayed Anderson's hand, the flick, the sound of the ID hitting marble. Pause, save, transfer. He opened a browser. Anderson Mitchell LinkedIn. Polished posts filled the screen. Corporate euphemisms, words like alignment, filtering, standards. Jackson took screenshots. Phrases like, "Not every profile deserves premium access," whispered through his mind. A folder formed on his desktop. Sterling evidence. The foundation of something bigger. At Coleman Group's headquarters, the legal team sat around a long table. Camilla led, calm and sharp. Clause 18, one attorney said. Immediate termination allowed in cases of discrimination, client-facing included. She looked up. Final? Signed. No amendments. Jackson stood at the back, arms folded, silent. Then, softly, "Good. Leave that clause." Camilla didn't press. She marked the clause, closed the file. Sometimes you don't need to break down the door. You just leave it ajar and wait. Later that day, Jackson adjusted the webcam on his laptop. A call connected. The face of a senior executive from Commonwealth Bank appeared, calm, measured, respectful. "If Coleman Group were to redirect a $5 billion contract your way," Jackson asked, "what would onboarding look like?" The man leaned forward. "We begin with one value, respect. Not because of dollar signs, because people matter." Jackson nodded. "Just once. No dress codes, no tier assumptions, just partnership." The executive smiled. "We've followed Coleman's work for years, Mr. Coleman. It would be an honor to collaborate. On your terms." Jackson smiled faintly. "I'll keep that in mind." As the call ended, Jackson sat back. For the first time that day, he let himself breathe deeply. Back at Sterling, Anderson sipped from a gold-trimmed espresso mug. He logged onto LinkedIn. Fingers flying, turned down 3 weak apps today. Standards matter. He added a smiling emoji. Post. Likes trickled in. "Love this. Protect the brand." Across town, Jackson read the post. Once. Then again. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He whispered to himself, "Thank you for the confession." He set the phone down gently. The trap wasn't sprung. Not yet. But now, it had teeth. Night deepened. Jackson remained by the window, untouched water glass beside him. The city blinked in silence. Cold reflections danced along his skin. His eyes stayed still, but his memory did not. 20 years ago. Another bank, another face. Same dismissive smile. "We're not comfortable lending on your kind of idea." He closed his eyes. Just for a second. They hadn't changed, Jackson thought, watching the city glow beneath a thin veil of dawn. They'd just gotten better at appearances. Sleeker suits. Smoother lies. He leaned forward, arms resting on his knees. A faint smirk lifted the corner of his mouth. The only real difference now? He could buy the building they once refused to let him enter. And maybe, just maybe, he would. Sunlight trickled through the hotel curtains. Jackson stood before the mirror, meticulously adjusting his charcoal suit. Silver cufflinks gleamed against the crisp white sleeves. His hair was combed back, not a strand out of place. In the reflection stood a man no longer seeking approval, only truth. He slipped on his watch. 7:46 a.m. Across town, Anderson strutted into the marble lobby of Sterling, AirPods in, coffee balanced in one hand. He winked at the receptionist, too pleased with himself to notice Paula watching from her desk, her gaze cool and sharp. His phone buzzed. Strategy briefing, Coleman Group. 10 a.m., mandatory. Anderson grinned. "Finally," he muttered, straightening his gold tie in the reflection of the glass door. He didn't know what was coming. Back in his suite, Jackson reached for his leather briefcase. No words, no hesitation, just steady forward motion. The Coleman Group's headquarters opened with a soft chime. Jackson stepped inside. 2 receptionists straightened immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Coleman. Welcome back, sir." He nodded. No smile, no small talk. Security didn't ask for ID. They waved him through like royalty. On the 27th floor, the executive wing was already stirring. At Sterling, Paula's screen lit up. Prep Executive Boardroom, Coleman Group incoming, 10 o'clock sharp. Her breath caught. Office of the CEO. A second message blinked. Full board. Mandatory attendance. She rose from her chair and knocked on Anderson's office door. "A major partner's arriving," she said. "High priority." Anderson barely looked up. "Another pitch? Let them wait." She didn't respond, because she knew, today, they wouldn't be the ones waiting. In the executive boardroom, Anderson adjusted the crease on his blazer. Fresh espresso steamed next to his leather-bound notebook. The slideshow was loaded, logo centered, fonts perfect. The air was calibrated for power. 9:56 a.m. He checked his watch again. His shoes shone. His voice rehearsed silently. "This is it," he whispered. "Today, everything shifts." An assistant entered with bottled water, placing one at each seat. Anderson didn't acknowledge her. He was locked in. "Coleman Group, $5 billion, he murmured, tapping the clicker once for reassurance. Footsteps approached from beyond the doors. Slow, steady, familiar. He didn't look up. He should have. The doors opened without a knock. Jackson entered first, dark suit immaculate, presence undeniable. Behind him, Camilla Coleman, sharp heels striking marble like a metronome of control. Her energy filled the room before she spoke a word. Anderson stood, instinctively, then froze. His face paled. His mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes darted from Jackson to Camilla. Recognition hit like a freight train. It was him. The same man from yesterday. No canvas jacket now, no old shoes, just power, silent, deliberate. Camilla took the head seat at the table. Jackson remained standing. Anderson didn't move. His hands hovered above his chair, unsure what to do. "You met my father yesterday, didn't you?" Camilla asked, voice razor sharp. Anderson's throat dried instantly. I didn't know. I didn't realize." He stopped. Words failed. The room listened. Jackson turned slowly. His voice, when it came, was low but clear. "You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to know I was someone." Silence, unforgiving. Even the assistant stopped taking notes. Anderson's hands trembled. His jaw tightened, but no defense formed. The room offered none. Camilla turned a single page in her folder. "Coleman Group is officially terminating all negotiations with Sterling Financial." No pause, no room for debate. Just the verdict. Anderson's mouth fell open. The doors burst open again. Michael Turner, regional director, hurried in. Tie askew, steps uneven. "Wait, please," he said, moving toward the table. "There must be a misunderstanding. Let's talk." Camilla didn't move. Jackson turned to face him. Michael's expression shifted. No one had told him that Jackson was the Coleman. "We can fix this," Michael said, desperation rising. "Let's talk privately." Camilla met his gaze. "This is us talking." Jackson opened his briefcase, pulling out a printed transcript, neatly clipped, highlights in red. He tapped his smartwatch. The screen lit up, a silent video. Anderson flicking the ID card, Jackson bending to pick it up. He turned the screen for the room to see. Then came the screenshots, LinkedIn posts, circled comments. "Protect the brand. Trust your instinct. Some clients don't belong." Jackson looked from the papers to Anderson, then to Michael. "You said you hold high standards," he said. "Is this what you mean?" Anderson's gaze dropped. Michael said nothing. What could he say? Truth stood naked on the table. Anderson took a step forward. I can change. I didn't know. Please, just give me another chance." His voice cracked. His posture collapsed. He looked between Camilla and Jackson, desperate now. "This doesn't have to end like this." Jackson didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean in. He simply said, "You already had your chance." One breath, then, "When you threw my ID on the floor." Anderson blinked, like the memory had blindsided him. But Jackson remembered every frame. And now? So did everyone else. A mistake made in arrogance, echoed in silence, and now paid in full. Camilla reopened her folder. The meeting wasn't over, but the story had already changed forever. Camilla slid a single document across the table, their final contract with Sterling. With steady hands, she signed at the bottom. One stroke, then another. Done. No ceremony. No flourish. She pushed the folder forward. Anderson stared, frozen. His chest rose, but no air filled his lungs. The silence wrapped around him like fog. A camera lens zoomed in silently, catching the hollow in his eyes, the slump of his shoulders. Everything he had spent years building, unraveling in real time. Behind him, the company's banner read, "Integrity, excellence, trust." Anderson couldn't bear to look at it. Camilla clicked her pen shut. Jackson stood. No applause, no reaction, just truth. The kind that doesn't need noise to be heard. Not a single person moved, no rustling papers, no cleared throats. Even breath seemed forbidden. Staff looked around, wide-eyed, seeking a cue. Anyone to break the tension. None came. Jackson's voice finally rose. Not loud, but firm. "I didn't come here to test your services," he said. "I came to test your character." The words didn't echo. They landed. Simple, final. Heavy with consequence. He adjusted his cuff, and the room shifted. Not with sound, but with shame. Several employees dropped their eyes. Anderson didn't dare raise his. Jackson looked to Camilla, then turned toward the door. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. And everyone now saw themselves clearly in its reflection. Then, something unexpected. Paula stood. She cleared her throat, her voice shaking but strong. "Mr. Jackson, Ms. Camilla, we failed more than just your standards today. We failed our own." She paused, then continued. "I take responsibility, not because I caused this, but because I stayed silent when I knew better." Gasps rustled the back row. Jackson turned, reading her face. There was no performance in her tone, only honesty. He nodded gently. "At least someone remembers what's right," he said. It wasn't forgiveness, but something in the room cracked. A start. Michael Turner, the regional director, stepped forward. Voice quick, palms almost pleading. "Mr. Jackson, we're willing to issue a public apology. We'll review and revise our policies immediately. Perhaps a gesture, compensation." Jackson raised a hand. Not in anger, just to end the noise. "No need," he said quietly. He looked to Camilla, then back to Turner. "We've already chosen a new partner." The word struck harder than any accusation. Turner's face sagged. Around him, the air thickened. "This isn't about PR," Jackson said. "It's about principle." Camilla gathered the signed documents. No fanfare, no backtracking, just resolution. The boardroom emptied, not with chaos, but with clarity. Across the city, light streamed into a newer, warmer room. The logo behind the boardroom table read, Commonwealth National Bank. Jackson sat beside Camilla, pen in hand. Across from them, the bank director smiled. "It's an honor, Mr. Jackson. You're not just bringing capital, you're bringing culture." Jackson signed. One stroke, then another. $5.2 billion. Sealed. No tension, no friction, just alignment. "This partnership isn't just about numbers," the director added. "It's about what we stand for." Jackson nodded once. "Then we're in good company." Camilla looked at her father, pride clear in her eyes. He gave her a quiet, steady smile. Justice hadn't shouted. It had simply arrived. Back at Sterling, Anderson packed in silence. His office was almost bare now. Framed photos stacked. A gold nameplate face down in a cardboard box. He folded his blazer carefully, but his fingers trembled. No one spoke. No one offered help. People passed his door with quickened steps and lowered eyes. He sat one last time in the chair that used to feel like power. 8 years, he whispered. Gone in 8 seconds of arrogance. His eyes drifted to the hallway, once filled with greetings and deference, now only quiet. Paula's new nameplate hung on the door that used to be his. He looked away. The fall was quiet, but complete. He lifted the box and walked out. No send-off. No redemption, just the weight of consequence earned. A new day. Paula stood in her new office, once Anderson's. But the energy had changed. On the glass wall, a new sign read, "Respect before you judge." Clear, director, unmistakable. People walked past, some slowing to read, others nodded. Inside, Paula opened a folder titled Internal Culture Reform. She didn't speak, but she smiled. Soft, sincere. Not victory, responsibility. One step in the right direction. Downstairs, the Sterling lobby buzzed like usual, but something in the air had shifted. Lighter, clearer. Back at Coleman HQ, Jackson stepped off the elevator. A crowd of young staff greeted him, eyes wide, grinning. "Boss, is it true? You really went undercover?" someone asked. Laughter bubbled through the group. Jackson adjusted his cufflinks. Smiling, he said, "Sometimes the only way to see someone's true character is to let them think you have none." Silence, then applause. Light at first, then building. Not for theatrics, but for principle. He gave a small wave and walked to his office. One intern whispered, "That's leadership." Another added, "That's legacy." Jackson disappeared down the corridor. The team returned to work, but now, with something more than direction, perspective. At a press conference that afternoon, Jackson stood at the podium. No suit, just a soft gray sweater. His voice was calm, not a statement, a message, and the world was finally listening. Behind Jackson, a large banner read, "The Coleman Foundation, for those told no." His voice was calm, steady, clear. "We've all been underestimated," he said. "But now we're building doors where others kept walls." Cut to a sweeping montage. A young woman unlocks the door of her first bakery, tears glistening in the corners of her eyes. A college dropout, standing in front of a humble startup office, shakes hands with a mentor, hope replacing doubt. A man in a wheelchair rolls proudly past a freshly mounted business-registered sign. His lips tremble, joy and disbelief colliding, smiles, hugs, possibility. A voiceover plays, "We don't just invest in ideas, we invest in people who were never given a chance." The crowd rose to their feet. Applause swelled, not for performance, but for promise. Jackson remained still, no wave, no bow, just a quiet nod, eyes calm. He wasn't fixing the world. He was beginning somewhere. In a quiet corner of a downtown cafe, Anderson sat alone, a thin folder clutched in his hands. Outside, a now hiring sign was being removed from the window, rejected again. He stirred his coffee, jaw tight, gaze unfocused. The door chimed. Jackson walked in. No suit, no entourage, just presence. Their eyes met. Anderson froze. Jackson offered a polite nod, ordered a coffee, then turned to leave, but paused. Anderson cleared his throat. "Mr. Jackson, I'm sorry." Jackson looked at him. No scorn, no satisfaction, just observation. "I hope you find a place," he said quietly, "where someone sees you, not just your resume." Anderson lowered his eyes. Jackson turned to go, but Anderson stood, voice shaking. "Wait, please, I wanted to say I'm truly sorry." Jackson stopped halfway, hands in his pockets. His tone was still calm, not distant, just finished. "Now you know who I am," he said. "But back then, all you needed to know was that I was a human being." Anderson couldn't reply. Jackson held his gaze a moment longer. No anger, only clarity. Then he walked into the morning light. Anderson remained still. No applause, no headlines. Just truth, quiet and unshakable. A year passed. At a national banking conference, the lights dimmed, cameras rolled. Jackson stood at the podium, not with a script, but with memory. Behind him, a single slide. Decisions that cost. He surveyed the room, expectation thick. Then he spoke, slow, precise. Sometimes 5 seconds of disrespect can cost you $5 billion. A pause, it landed. And not just the money, the trust, the future, the soul of your business. Heads nodded. Notes were scribbled. Silence became weight. You don't lose deals when someone walks out, Jackson continued. You lose them the moment someone feels invisible. No applause, just understanding. He stepped back, hands still. The truth didn't need emphasis, only space. The camera panned across the auditorium. In the last row, Anderson sat alone, back straight, head bowed, hands clasped, not in prayer, but in remembrance. The spotlight never reached him, but the words did. A few rows ahead, Camilla turned slightly. She saw him, said nothing, no expression, just recognition. Sometimes silence is the only response that fits. The speech continued above, but in that corner seat, time froze. Regret isn't always loud. It often sits in the shadows, listening. After the speech, the crowd surged. Young professionals lined up, eager, inspired. Jackson shook hands, accepted photos, answered quiet thank yous. One young man, hesitantly dressed, skin dark, voice unsure, stepped forward. "Sir," he asked, "did you ever feel like people looked down on you, like you didn't belong?" Jackson paused, then smiled softly. "Many times," he replied. "But here's what matters. Never let someone else define your worth." He looked the boy in the eye. "They might judge you wrong, but don't let them be right." The boy's eyes welled slightly. They shook hands. "Walk into every room like you belong," Jackson added, "even if no one else sees it yet." The moment lingered. One generation lived it. The next now carried it. Outside, the hall buzzed behind him. Jackson stepped into the fading golden light of afternoon. As he passed the marble columns, a large poster stood at the exit. Don't judge by appearance. Judge by how they treat the powerless. He slowed. His eyes lingered. No nod, no comment, just recognition. Then he moved on, each step steady, certain. The message didn't need his words. His life had already delivered it. Behind him, the poster stood tall, a mirror of every choice he'd made, a wide shot of the city. Towers shimmered beneath the evening sky. Inside his glass-walled office, Jackson stood by the window. Golden light danced across his face. His voice entered, quiet and resolute. "I didn't go there to teach them a lesson. I went to see who belonged in the future." A beat. Never underestimate someone because of how they look. One day, you might find yourself standing before them, asking for the second chance you once threw away. The skyline stretched, glowing. Jackson turned from the window and walked deeper into the room, leaving behind more than a city. Leaving a story that would never be forgotten. Not a tale of revenge, but the enduring, quiet power of knowing.